Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Radi Allah ta'ala anhu wa sarada tabi'ina wa ulama amilina wa a'ima arba'i mujtahideen wa muqallidihim ila yawm ad-din ma ba'd. So the topic of discussion is about the Salah. And the prayer is the key to enlightenment, right? And there's many hadiths that is given reference to this about salah being that that thing that elevates or mobilizes a person. So the topic of discussion is going to be centered around actual text that I'm actually compiling. I haven't figured out a name. It's inspired by Sheikh Abdullahi Danfodio's book called Ruh Salat. And so we'll discuss just the gist of Salat. Now, this isn't going to make you like the Grand Mufti of Salat or anything like that, but however, it will give you firmness. It'll make you thabit, firm in your prayer, at least in that. So the first that we'll discuss about the salat before we go into, and probably in about like 10, 15 minutes, maybe we'll probably be breaking for Maghrib. What time is it? About like 10, 15 minutes, inshallah. We'll be breaking for Maghrib, but we'll come back to it. So the description of the salah, all of it is based off of various ahadith from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, various hadith description, because that is where we learn the actual description of the salat, the prayer. It's not something that we make up. It's a lot of things. There's a lot of disputation and argumentation, and the reason why argumentation is usually because of the lack of understanding of the salat, and people are kind of like all over the place and it's always been problematic, especially in our communities, because truthfully, when we kind of like learn the salat, it used to be very common. It depends on when and where you became Muslim at, but it's very common. Most people learn salat from a YouTube video, or they learn from, the old prayer pamphlets from back in the day. A lot of people didn't learn salat from another person who learned from another person who learned from another person who can attribute it back to the Prophet ﷺ, right? But rather what they learned is probably from some book, that someone compiled. And not saying that the book is incorrect, right? But, usually people I know that's how I learned. When I first learned when I first became Muslim and I thought I was praying, number one, I was reciting Fatiha. I was saying the Fatiha in English, right? Number two, I was saying Fatiha through the whole prayer. I didn't even say a second surah. Number three, every movement, I said one line of the Fatiha, right? So I was already jammed up from the rip. So I'll talk beer in. The only thing I think I did say in Arabic was Allahu Akbar, right? And you start from there. And then I would say, in the name of Allah, the Beneficent and Merciful, Allahu Akbar. Go to the next position. All praise is due to Allah, the Lord of the worlds. Go to the next position. I ain't even say Salah properly. It took some time, and then someone actually sat down and taught me the prayer. After that, the next level that you usually graduate and elevate to is you start reading books of fiqh, and you start giving and making rulings pertaining to the prayer, and don't necessarily understand, the everything, with regards to the rulings, what's this coming from, where that's coming from this coming from. And so a lot of people, they'll make statements of saying like, oh, you're overcomplicating things for people and stuff like that. But honestly, without, you don't just buy a gadget and you start messing with it without learning, reading the manual, right? You follow instructions. A surgeon don't just become a surgeon because he read a lot of books, you see? So they go through a specific training. And so oftentimes, a lot of time in our situation, sometimes we might be the only one Muslim, or, everybody's too busy to teach you or even deal with you to that capacity, and so on and so forth. So time has progressed, and there's still people becoming Muslim. It hasn't stopped because we stopped, right? People are still becoming Muslim. So now, what's happening now, what we promote is more of a traditional sense. The same way that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he taught a man Salah, right? And give me 1 second, I want to find this particular riwayah. I want to discuss this. It's the one actual narration that where it's mentioning Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam giving description of the prayer. All right? And if I'm not mistaken, listen, this text I'm about to look in. Just give me 1 second here. And then after we discuss that, then we'll break for the Salah, I'll call the Adhan, break for the Salah, and then we'll come back to this. Come back to the class, inshallah. Now, so no, it's not even in this particular book. But anyway, so but this hadith is actually relevant, so I'm gonna discuss this particular hadith here. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran, Allah says, وَأَقِيمُوا الصَّلَاةَ وَإِنَّ الصَّلَاةَ كَانَتْ عَلَى الْمُؤْمِنِينَ كِتَابًا مَوْقُوتًا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says in the Quran, establish the prayer, and the prayer is at, basically like at a time. You have a specific time for it, a time ordinance for believers, right? And he says, the Shaykh, he says, وَعَنَا عَائِشَةَ رَضِيَ اللَّهُ تَعَالَى عَنْهُ فِي صَحِيحِ الْبُخَارِ in Sahih Bukhari, on the authority of Aisha, Mu'minina, وقالت فرض الله الصلاة حين وفرضها ركعتين في الحضر والسفر وأقرت صلاة السفر وزيد في الصلاة حضر وزادت الأحمد في المسند إلا مغرب. Well, let me translate the first hadith on behalf of Aisha. Aisha was reported from Imam Bukhari in his Sahih. He said, who said Allah Ta'ala initially made the Salah obligatory with just 2 rak'ahs. And 2 rak'ahs when settled or in traveling. And then the traveling prayer was kept at 2 rak'ahs. However, it was the increase was made when settled. Meaning that, and this is Salah in general. All of the Salah, what she's saying here is, all of the Salah was 2 rak'ahs, and then Allah increased it when you were in your residence, right? So let's say, for instance, if you were traveling to New York, and you're traveling for less than 20 salats. 20 salats is 5 days, right? No, 4 days, I'm sorry. You're staying for less than 4 days, then you are able to shorten the prayers, right? You shorten the 4 rak'ah prayers, which would be Dhuhr, Asr, and Isha, right? Those 3 prayers, instead of making 4 rak'ahs, you would salam after you completed 2, right? That's for the traveling prayer. If and so when you're resident, you carry out the full prayers, so you'll pray them in their normal state. You don't shorten Subh, Fajr. Why? Because Fajr is already 2 rak'ahs, right? And you can't shorten Maghrib, because then you would turn Maghrib into a even prayer, even number prayer. So you could carry out the same 3. But the other 3 prayers, those four rak'ahs get shortened into 2. So then he mentions another hadith in the Musnad of Imam Ahmed. He says Ahmed fil Musnad ila Maghrib fa innaha kanat thalatha. All right. So he said that Imam Ahmed added in his Musnad, he mentioned in his Musnad, this is Imam Ahmed ibn Hanbal's book, he said, except for the Maghrib prayer, because it was 3 rak'ahs. He said, it's also said, he says, وقال عليه الصلاة والسلام في صحيح البخاري أيضا في الحديث أبو هريرة رضي الله تعالى عنه في قصة أعرابي. He said, إذا قمت إلى الصلاة فكبر ثم أقرأ ما يسر معك من القرآن ثم أركع حتى تطمئن راكعا right ثم أرفع حتى تعتدل قائما ثم أسجد حتى تطمئن ساجدا ثم أرفع حتى تطمئن جالسا ثم أسجد حتى تطمئن ساجدا ثم أفعل ذلك في صلاتك كلها. Right? So he says here, he says in the Sahih Bukhari on the authority of Abu Hurairah radiallahu ta'ala anhu. It was concerning the man who was the Bedouin. This is actually the hadith that I was actually looking for. There was a man, he had prayed, he prayed, he prayed, the Prophet ﷺ seen him, he said, go back and pray, you didn't pray properly, right? Man went back again, he prayed again, he said, go back and pray, you didn't pray properly. He did this 3 times, and then he said, and he asked the Prophet ﷺ, well, show me how to pray. And so Abu Hurairah, he said, radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he said that the Prophet ﷺ said, when you stand for prayer, you say, Allahu Akbar, right? You make takbir ihram, right? And we're going to discuss this after Salah, but I'm just narrating the hadith word for word. He says that when you stand for prayer, you say, Allahu Akbar, right? Then you recite what's easiest from the Quran, Then you make the ruku' until you are like settled in it. And then you raise up from it until you're standing straight. And then you prostrate until you become settled in it. And then you raise up sitting until you're settled in it. And then you prostrate until you're settled in it. And then you do the same in all of the remainder of the salah. So here he gives the description where it's actually the Prophet demonstrating and showing the actual prayer. As you get in, progressing your studies, you'll start to understand where they have where there's conflicting certain practices, whether you raise your hands throughout the entire prayer or whether you don't raise your hands through the entire prayer, whether you put your hands on your chest or over your navel, or do you leave them on your side and things of that nature. That stuff you learn later on. What's amazing is that you find in our time that new Muslims, new Shahadas, people just becoming Muslim, they're more inclined towards arguing about those issues versus actually learning how to pray. When you ask them about things that are essential to the prayer, like the tashahhud, they can't tell you that. You ask them things about what will make a prayer invalid, they can't actually tell you that. But they'll say anything that ain't from the sunnah, right? They'll give a generalized answer, which you'll find a generalized answer. Sometimes they're wrong in their generalized answer that they're trying to give. So usually a lot of people, what happens is they don't understand the actual salat in itself, right? They don't actually understand the salat in itself, but what they're being taught is how to argue and disagree and fight amongst each other, right? To that point. So what we're going to discuss here is about just the essentials of the prayer and how the prayer, and these things that are connected to the prayer, how they'll be beneficial. I'm going to give those rulings with regards to the prayer that are necessary, right? That are necessary and that will work, that will equip the person for some basic things with regards to the prayer, for the validity of prayer. 2 hours isn't going to be enough time to summarize everything with regards to the salat. We ain't pray Maghrib yet. Oh, yeah. Nah. Matter of fact, somebody need to call it Adhan because we didn't even call it Adhan yet. But the essentials with regards to the prayer, the class will cover some of them and not all of the rules because, like I said, for the length of time, maybe this is something we have to revisit in the future, or so on and so forth. But it's enough. This is kind of like almost like a basic training, like combat right too, inshallah. Yeah, inshallah. So we'll stop there and we'll continue after the salah, inshallah. Allah Akbar.